Guys, welcome back. We're going to continue on with chapter 9. Last time, if you remember, we did product of powers, so we were multiplying our powers. Today, in lesson 9.3, we're going to do the quotient of powers. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the quotient of powers property. If you think back to the product of powers property, remember whenever I was multiplying exponents with the same bases, I would add my exponents, right? So here, if I divide with the same base, I'm going to subtract their exponents. Okay, so if I have 4 to the 5th over 4 to the 2nd, I'm going to subtract my exponents. My bases are the same, so that means I can subtract my exponents. So that means I'm going to take 4 to the 5th minus the 2nd, which is going to be 4 to the 3rd. Okay, so in algebra terms, that says a to the m over a to the n is going to be a to the m minus n. Okay, so just like we did with multiplication, if our bases are the same and we're multiplying, we're going to add our exponents. Okay, here, if our bases are the same and we're dividing, we're going to subtract our exponents. So, dividing the powers with the same base. I was having a hard time getting my computer to type fractions with exponents, so bear with me as I write in our problems. Okay, so I'm going to start with 2 to the 6th over 2 to the 4th. My bases are the same. I have a 2 for both of my bases. So if my bases are the same, that means I'm going to subtract my exponents. So I'm going to have 6 minus 4. So I'm going to get 2 to the 2nd power. Okay, just like multiplication, my base is going to stay the same, but I'm going to subtract my exponents. Okay, for letter B, we're going to do negative 7. Negative 7 to the 9th power over negative 7 to the 3rd power. Since my bases are the same, I'm going to go ahead and subtract. I always subtract top minus bottom. So negative 7 to the 9th minus the 3rd, which is going to give me negative 7 to the 6th. Okay, letter C. I have h to the 7th over h to the 6th. Bases are the same, so I'm going to take h to the 7th minus the 6th, which is going to give me h to the 1st, which is the same thing as h. And finally, I have D. So I'm going to have 9 to the 7th over 9 to the 4th. My bases are the same, so it's going to be 9 to the 7th minus the 4th, which is going to give me 9 to the 3rd. Okay, so whenever we're dividing with bases that are the same, I just subtract to get my final exponent. Okay, now let's do simplifying an expression. Okay, so an expression means that I'm going to have different operations to do. Okay, we're going to solve each side of our fraction separately, and then we will be able to subtract. Okay, so I'm going to have 3 to the 4th times 3 to the 2nd over 3 to the 3rd. So here on my numerator, on the top of my fraction, I have a multiplication problem. I have 3 to the 4th times 3 to the 2nd. So I need to go ahead and solve that first. Remember, whenever I multiply, I add my exponents. So 4 plus 2 is going to give me 6. So I'm going to have 3 to the 6th over 3 to the 3rd. Now I'm dividing like bases. That means I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to have 3 to the 6th minus 3, which is going to give me 3 to the 3rd power. Okay, so I'm going to solve each side as best as I can, and then I will multiply or divide from there. Okay, letter B. I have a to the 10th over a to the 6th times a to the 7th over a to the 4th. Okay, now we're going to go ahead, since they're separated, we're going to go ahead and divide this out and then divide this out. Then from there, we'll multiply. Okay, so I'm going to have a to the 10th minus 6. So a to the 10th minus 6 is going to be a to the 4th times 7 minus 4, which is going to give me a to the 3rd. Now I have a multiplication problem. Remember, whenever I multiply, I add. So I'm going to have a to the 4th plus the 3rd, which is going to give me a to the 7th. Okay, next up, I have 2 to the 15th over 2 to the 3rd times 2 to the 5th. So I need to work out my multiplication problem on the denominator. So I'm multiplying, which means I add. So I'm going to have 2 to the 15th over 2 to the 8th. Now I can divide it out, which means I'm subtracting. 15 minus 8 is going to give me 2 to the 7th. Okay, for D, I'm going to have D to the 5th over D, times D to the 9th over D to the 8th. So let's go ahead and work our division problems first, which means I'm subtracting. Remember, if I don't have an exponent with a variable, there's going to be a 1 there. So I'm going to have D to the 5th minus the 1st, which is going to give me D to the 4th, times D to the 9th minus the 8th, which is just going to give me D. Now I have a multiplication problem, so I'm going to take D to the 4th. There's an understood 1 plus 1, so I'm going to get D to the 5th. In my very last problem, I'm going to have A to the 3rd times B to the 4th times 5 to the 4th over B to the 2nd times 5. Okay, so I remember I can only multiply and divide like bases. Okay, so I can only multiply and divide like bases. So I need to find my like bases. So here's an A. That's my only A that I have. So that means that base is going to stay the same. It's going to stay A to the 3rd. Okay, then I have B's. I have B to the 4th and I have B to the 2nd. Okay, so if I were to write that out, I would have B to the 4th over B to the 2nd. Well, what happens in a division problem? In a division problem, I subtract. So 4 minus 2 is going to give me B to the 2nd. Okay, now I have 5s. I have a base of 5. So I have 5 to the 4th over 5. Remember, if there's not a number there, if there's not an exponent, there's an understood 1. I'm dividing, so I'm going to subtract. 4 minus 1 is going to give me 5 to the 3rd. So now I can write this out all together. I'm going to have A to the 3rd times B to the 2nd times 5 to the 3rd. And we're going to go ahead and work that out. 5 times 5 times 5 is going to give me 125. So I get 125, A to the 3rd, B to the 2nd. We're going to go ahead and do one more practice problem. On these notes, I didn't make enough room in your notes to do it, but we're going to go ahead and do an extra one just to get a little extra practice. So we're going to do 5 to the 12th times C to the 10th times D to the 2nd over 5 to the 9th times C to the 9th. Remember, I can only multiply and divide like bases. So right now, I don't have anything that I can multiply, but I do need to go ahead and find my like bases. I have 5s. So I have 5 to the 12th over 5 to the 9th. 12 minus 9 is going to give me 5 to the 3rd. If you remember from our last problem, 5 to the 3rd is 125. My next base I have is C. I don't have any like bases of C, so I'm going to say C to the 10th. That's not going to change. And then after that, I have I'm so sorry. I do have a like base with C. So what happens whenever you don't? You get in a hurry, right? Okay. So I have c to the 10th and I have c to the 9th. So c to the 10th minus c to the 9th is just c. 10 minus 9 is 1, so that gives us c. And now I have just a like base of d all by itself. So d to the second is going to stay d to the second. So now if I rewrite this, I'm going to say 125 c d to the second. Okay, so you need to go do your practice problems for lesson 9.3. There should be 5 of them. You also have a big ideas math assignment that goes with this lesson. Make sure to complete that and turn both of those in to me. Again, shoot me an email if you have any questions at all. Okay, go ahead and get through this. You guys should be good with it, but be sure to ask me questions if you have them. Remember, we only have one more week, so let's go through and let's get all of our work done and make sure that we're understanding so we can really be successful next year. Okay? Good luck. Let me know if you have questions.